I should actually have myself on the screen before I start talking. So Rabbi Berel Wein passed away. Um, and funny enough, just a little while ago, I wrote a tweet um, that mentioned him, and so I thought I would do a little memorial. Um, this is the announcement from the OU, the Orthodox Union, which is the largest Orthodox organization of rabbis. You may know them from the Circle U, um, which is the most widely used hechsher, which is kosher certification. And Rabbi Wein was actually at one point the head of kashrut at the Orthodox Union. Um, he passed away at the age of 91 in Jerusalem over Shabbat, apparently in the morning of Shabbat. And he was buried this morning on Har HaZeitim, the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. Um, well, here, let's read the the Orthodox Union joins with Klal Israel, all of Israel, in mourning the loss of Rabbi Berel Wein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The memory of a righteous man is a blessing. Rabbi Wein was a uniquely impactful Rav whose work, perspective, and voice profoundly influenced generations of Orthodox Jewry. Rabbi Wein would often note that when he received semicha, that's ordination, to become a rabbi, Orthodoxy was in such a state of decline that a professional career in the Orthodox rabbinate was considered a pipe dream. Nevertheless, after a brief stint as a lawyer, Rabbi Wein embarked on a multifaceted career as a rabbi and educator in America and Israel that spanned 6 decades and contributed significantly to Orthodoxy's rebirth. In 1964, at the age of 30, Rabbi Wein became the rabbi of Beth Israel congregation in Miami Beach, and at 38, he became the executive vice president of the Orthodox Union. Shortly thereafter, following the sudden passing of Rabbi Alexander Rosenberg, Zecher Tzedek Livracha, one of Rabbi Wein's mentors, he replaced him at the helm of OU Kosher, a position he occupied for 5 years. He founded Congregation Base Torah and Yeshiva Sharei Torah in Muncie, serving as Rav and Dean. He literally revived the popular study of Jewish history through a pioneering series of hundreds of lectures on the topic, one of the first sets of widely distributed Torah recordings. He retired to Israel in 1997, which was shortly before I got there in 1999, becoming Rav of the Beit Knesset Hanasi, that is the official synagogue for the president of Israel. In Jerusalem, a Rabbi in Yeshivat Or Sameach, which is the yeshiva that I and Rabbi Malot attended, and launching the Destiny Foundation, producing high-quality films on Jewish history for a wide audience. I was actually looking at his website. I got to see the movie that he produced on the life of Rashi, which he was big on high-quality things. Sometimes the price was a bit high, as many Torah things are. His 3-part series on Jewish history is a beautiful coffee table book series that is meant by Art Scroll, that's meant to be a kind of keepsake and a way of inspiring your children about Jewish history, which is what much of his lectures did. He was a podcaster before there were podcasts. Um, the cassettes, back when people used to pass around cassettes of and then DVDs of his or CD-ROMs, I guess, of his lectures became really popular. Um, and he became a very popular speaker. And frankly, his classes. So he taught Treyasar. He taught. So Treyasar literally translates to 12, which is the minor prophets, minor in size, not in importance, which in Jewish parlance is referred to as Treyasar because they were 12 prophets that were put on one scroll. Anyway, so he used to teach Treyasar when I was at yeshiva in Or Sameach to the program I was in. He also lectured widely on Jewish history. Yeah, so great stuff. I mean, I highly recommend it. He also would give a mincha, a share between mincha and Maariv. So afternoon prayers and evening prayers, when they're held one after the other, it's usual for the rabbi to speak for about 10-15 minutes, and he did that, and it's available on YouTube. And they were interesting. I tried to keep up with them when I could. Um, yeah, he was an amazing person. Um, he almost never spoke poorly of anyone. The one exception he made was for Eliyahu Mizrahi, which he said he felt necessary to denounce by name, which, yeah. Um, but generally, he had two trademark. Well, he had a few trademark sayings. Um, one of which was he would sigh, and that sigh said everything. Yeah. Um, Another was he would say they just don't get it, or some people just don't get it, and that was about as much. Um, and that was about as much condemnation as we ever heard. Um, and another saying of his was, "When the Cubs win the pennant." This was in 1998. The Cubs had not won the World Series since the 90s. I mean, since the early 1900s. And so he had, despite having been a lifelong Cubs fan, had never seen the Cubs winning the World Series. And so he would describe things like when Mashiach comes. When other people would say when Mashiach comes, he would say when the Cubs win the pennant. And when in 2016 they won, I remember actually contacting some of my friends from yeshiva and being like, Rabbi Wein finally got to see the Cubs win the pennant. Maybe Mashiach is going to come. Yeah, he was a very interesting guy. I got to see one of his grandkids came on one of the tours he was giving us, and I think it was maybe his father, but for some reason, it might have even been his grandfather who came to yeshiva once. Um, and we got to see him briefly with Rabbi Wein. Um, I mean, I have a hard time believing it was his grandfather, but and that's the only reason why it makes me think it was his grandfather, his father, not his grandfather. Um, I also remember once him mentioning the pin test and how his grandfather passed the pin test. So if you don't know what the pin test is, um, it's supposedly when you grab a Talmud and you either stick a pin through it or point on one place on the page, and the person is supposed to be able to tell you what word that pin pierces on every page in that tractate of the Talmud. And I think he mentioned his grandfather, or maybe it was his father. I don't remember. Um, Doing the pin test because there were so few copies of the Talmud in the yeshivas there that each person was assigned to memorize one tractate, and then if you needed to look something up on a tractate, you could go ask the person who is responsible for knowing that tractate. Um, yeah, so um, along the way, Rabbi Wein published several serious works on Talmudic topics and a shelf full of works on Torah commentary, Jewish life, and history. Until the end, he continued to be a prolific writer and teacher of Torah, whose books and columns were read by thousands, and whose insight and wisdom were sought out and treasured. We mourn the passing of this unique Rav, educator, and communal leader, and will remain forever indebted to him both for his enduring impact on Klal Yisrael and for his lifelong support and involvement in the work of the Orthodox Union. So Rabbi Wein kind of strode the line between the modern Orthodox and Haredi. In many ways, he himself was very Haredi. In other ways, he was very modern Orthodox, including wearing a Cubs baseball cap at times. Um, and he, despite the fact that he himself obviously had leanings towards Zionism, he was always fair to all sides, and he understood the um, the discussion from all sides of the debate, which was the reason why I went to him when I did. Rabbi Mullet says, my Rebbe, yeah. Which is why I went to him when I had my questions. So this is the post I wrote a while back, and maybe it'll give you some idea of who Rabbi Wein was. Many years ago, as a young Zionist BT, Baal Tshuva, that is, a person who becomes more religious, in Jerusalem, I read Perfidy. That's the book by Ben Hecht. You could measure my rage, disappointment, disgust, sadness, and more on the Richter scale. I went to Rabbi Berel Wein, may he live long and be well, to find out the truth of the matter. He was an incredible person with history. I specifically asked him about Kastner and what happened there and Moshe Sharet. I asked him for recommendations for other books I could read, which could give me the other side. He recommended Trial in Jerusalem, I think is the name. His website has a wealth of resources, including a lot of his book recommendations and stuff. Interestingly enough, he included Perfidy in his list of of book recommendations. I went to Rabbi Berel Wein, may he live long and be well, to find out the truth of the matter. I still remember walking him from Mincha to the Navi Shir, that's the prophets, that's the Treasar Shir he gave. He gave an afternoon Seder at Or Sameach. I remember asking him questions. I remember asking him to help me make sense of it. Most of all, I remember the characteristic sigh Rabbi Wein sometimes gives, which echoes thousands of years of Navi in a way only he could. Yeah. When I got back to Los Angeles as a dutiful Sephardi BT with Hasidic leanings and ardent anti-Zionist, I found myself a wonder of things. Rabbi Ezra Dweck, may he live long and be well, was the Rav of a Sephardic shul, that's a synagogue. He was also someone who grew up at the feet of the Rebbe Rabbi Yoelish, that's the Satmar Rebbe. Felt like hashgacha. I remember once the synagogue decided to sponsor a live feed from Jerusalem of Rabbi Wein talking about Jewish history. So two-way internet feeds were a huge deal. This is 2001, I think it was. And several synagogues came together to, including the synagogue that I was at, that Rabbi Dweck was one of the rabbis at, decided to sponsor this two-way speech by Rabbi Wein. And talking about Jewish history, of course I had to go. Rabbi Dweck came, and when Rabbi Wein said something which crossed the line of what Rabbi Dweck knew to be Torah, he stood up and made a public maha'ah until he was ejected from the lecture. So Rabbi Wein said, people were asking him about immigration to Israel and making aliyah. And he said in a kind of joking way, well, if there are 100,000 Hasidim from Flatbush were living in Israel, things would be better. And Rabbi Dweck took exception to that and started yelling, Sheker v'chazav! And he was physically removed from the room. Yeah. When Rabbi Dweck left the synagogue to start his own, I went with him. On Yom Kippur, there was a scene when some Israelis demanded Rabbi Dweck say a prayer for the Chayalim, that's the soldiers in Israel. Rabbi Dweck made a point. He said, anybody can pray. There's the Aron. Feel free to say any prayers you like, but he objected to the idea that he had to, and they specifically wanted him. So these were specific troublemakers who first demanded that the cantor say a prayer for the Chayalim. And Rabbi Dweck, if I remember correctly, allowed that. He's like, if the cantor wants, he can say whatever prayers he wants. And he didn't mind. And when they saw that that didn't do it, they demanded that Rabbi Dweck say it. And Rabbi Dweck said, I'm not going to say any prayers. I am not going to add any prayers publicly. And they made a show of walking out. He refused, and they walked out. I told him that if he had said it, I would have walked out. I didn't have money to support him, but I supported him however I could. I was never a Ben Torah, and that is maybe more obvious now than it was then. But I hope that I have been modeh be'emet enough that I am only, actually the term, if I remember correctly in the Rambam, is mumar l'ta'avon, not kofer, but same difference. Kofer l'ta'avon, not a kofer l'hachis. I tried to learn Al HaGeula Al HaTmura, tried to learn through Yalkut Amarim Vayel Moshe, both of which I got from Rabbi Dweck. Yet one time, Rabbi Dweck very gently, in his loving way, explained to me that he was once very young and zealously anti-Zionist, too anti-Zionist, and he was more mature now. I got the hint. When a devoted Talmud of the Rabbi Eilish tells you to cool your hot-headed anti-Zionism, you do. I don't know how tall the mountains are. I don't mix in between them. I still have profound respect for Rabbi Wein, Rabbi Dweck, the Rabbi Eilish, the Rebbe Mamish from Chabad, the Rav Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rav Kook, Rav Ovadia, the Yanuka, and the other people who are too many to list who are B'nai Torah. I am an Amaretz, and I understand that much better now that I am older, much older. When rabbis who forgot more since they say Birkat HaTorah this morning than I ever learned disagree, I shut my mouth and don't pretend I can decide between them. I look towards my sins and see that they are far bigger than whatever the line was that Rabbi Wein crossed with Rabbi Dweck. There's a reason Rabbi Dweck stood up and yelled Sheker v'Kazav when Rabbi Wein spoke, yet quietly hinted to me in private to cool my supposed kana'ut, that's zealousness, for Hashem. I'm not Pinchas, to my shame. I'm not even Zimri ben Salu. I am dust under Zimri ben Salu's feet. I'm a putz arguing politics on Twitter, V'dai L'maven. Yeah, Rabbi Wein was well known as the Zionist Haredi rabbi. That did not ever mean that he did not have criticisms of the state of Israel. He did, or I never heard him speaking about the draft of yeshiva students. I never heard him talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut. I deliberately, because I just didn't want to deal with sometimes it's better not to ask than to try to pass judgment. Although I have to say, I would be very, very surprised if he, despite what was generally accepted at, I believe, Beit Knesset HaNasi, where he was rabbi, I believe they do say halal with a bracha on Yom Ha'atzmaut. I don't believe he did. Yeah, he was an amazing guy. Great patience. He was a walking, talking Sefer Torah, and he knew a lot about Jewish history. And he felt that we definitely are approaching a special time. And that was part of the reason he made Aliyah. He lived in Rehovot. Yeah. So that's Rabbi Wein. I don't know if this was in any way worthwhile. You can read his columns. If you're going to pick up any one of his books, I would probably say Buy Green Bananas is the shortest pithy book. So here, let's take a look at some of his books. Endless Hatred, Anti-Semitism from the Biblical Era to Modern Times. 8 people we met on the way home, the return of the Jewish nation to the land of Israel. In the shadow of thy hand, insights on Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur. Majesty, memory, and resonance, insights on Musaf for Rosh Hashanah. Yomim Noraim companion set, which is both his Rosh Hashanah one and I guess another one, which is, the shadow of thy hand. Struggles, challenges, and tradition, how Jewish communities defended orthodoxy. This I think he wrote after the trilogy that I read. In the footsteps of Eliyahu Hanavi, a historical journey through the countries of our diaspora. Who knows 12 Treyasar? So that's what I should probably buy this, but he gave that's what he would give shiur on in the afternoons in my Beit Midrash. Teach them diligently, the personal story of a community rabbi. I guess this was his autobiography. Patterns in Jewish history, insights into the past, present, and future of the eternal people. And this is the trilogy, which I highly recommend. It's illustrated and it's written so that I don't know if your average 12-year-old would be able to. I think they are average 12-year-old, but certainly it's a bar mitzvah set, and it's a beautiful bar mitzvah set. It's also expensive, but yeah. So triumph of survival, old ideas in a new world, Jews at the end of the 19th century, echoes of glory, the story of the Jews in the classical era, 350 BCE to 750 CE, herald of destiny, the story of the Jewish people in the medieval era, 750 to 1650. So, it basically goes in order. Faith and Fate book, the oral law of Sinai, and illustrated history of the Mishnah. Oh, I should actually probably. Pirkei Avot, teaching of our times. I didn't realize he had a Pesach Haggadah. Sand and Stars. I think this is from the Destiny Foundation, but not by Rabbi Wein. Second Thoughts, if I remember correctly, I did read. I mean, this was like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. His musings, it was pretty good, if I remember correctly. Tending the Vineyard, I don't know. Living Jewish, hardcover. Chukei Chaim, Saviv Ir Ha'itanim. Interesting. I have no idea what that is. And Rambam, the story of Maimonides, children storybook. Interesting. What happened to buy green bananas? Is it out of print? Art Scroll, $6.50. Oh yeah, I guess you can get it used for for like $7. It's nice and pithy. I guess it's out of print. Here it is on Goodreads. Observations on self, family, and life. 193-page paperback. A lot of quotable moments in the book. I really enjoyed this book and all its little snippets of advice. If you're going to read nothing else, I would read Buy Green Bananas. Yeah. Rehavia, not Rehovot. Yes, Rehavia. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. I think that's about it. Oh, I didn't show. Here's Buy Green Bananas. I thought I was showing you guys the thing, but I forgot. Yeah. Okay. I am going to end the stream. Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha. Baruch Dayan Emet.